Hello students, welcome to PG Pathshala. I am Arun Kumar Kapoor from the Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. Today I am going to speak on the module Test and Retest in Anthropological Research from the paper Research Methods and Fieldwork. The learning objectives to be discussed are: first, what do you mean by reliability? Second, what is test-retest method for assessment of reliability? Third, what are the advantages and disadvantages of test-retest method for assessment of reliability? Next, what is the test-retest coefficient correlation? How can we calculate test-retest coefficient correlation? And finally, application of test and retest reliability in anthropological research. First of all, let us have a brief introduction on body composition, which will be very easy to understand. Reliability is one of the most important elements of experiment or measurement quality in a research. It deals with the consistency or reproducibility of a researcher performance on the test or data collection. Reliability is the extent to which measurements are repeatable when different researchers perform the same measurements or experiment on different time intervals under different conditions. In sum, reliability is consistency of measurement or stability of measurements over a variety of conditions in which basically the same results should be obtained. Reliability is a property of the scores on a test for a particular unit of research population. When talking about measurement in the context of research, there is an important distinction between being valid and being reliable. Validity refers to whether measurement is correct, whereas reliability refers to whether the measurement is consistent. Reliability of a test can be assessed in a variety of ways. Different methods for assessment reliability are: first, test-retest method; second, internal consistency method; third, parallel forms method; fourth, inter-rater or inter-observation method. Test-retest method is the variation in measurements taken up by a single researcher or an instrument on the same parameters or experiment under the same conditions and in a short period of time. Test-retest reliability is most commonly used to assess the consistency of a measure from one time to another and also to determine if the score generalizes across time. The same test is conducted twice and are correlated to test the reliability. It is conceptually and intuitively the simplest approach, and one that most closely corresponds to the view of reliability as the consistency or repeatability of a measure. That is, if a researcher has same people and takes the same measurement or experiment on more than one occasion, that is, a first test occasion and retest occasion, the correlation between each test measurement will be the test-retest reliability. The measurement is conducted by single researcher, same parameter or experiment, under same conditions, short period of time. It assumes that there is no change in the underlying thread between time 1 and time 2. Test-retest reliability is directly investigated from the test data. No data external is required, unlike other types of reliability. Test retest coefficient correlation. The test retest of a measure is estimated through reliability coefficient. Reliability coefficient is often considered as a measure of the accuracy of a test or a measuring instrument obtained by measuring the same individuals twice and computing the correlation of the two sets of measures. A test retest coefficient assumes that the characteristics being measured by the experiment is stable over time. So, any change in scores from one time to another is caused by random error. The correlation coefficient obtained by this procedure is called test and reset reliability coefficient correlation. The test retest reliability coefficient correlation is usually calculated by Pearson coefficient correlation when the measurement or experiment is taken at two time intervals, whereas the measurement or experiment which is performed more than two occasions are usually calculated by intra-class correlation. Test retest is mostly conducted in two time intervals. Test retest method is the variation in measurements taken up by a single researcher or an instrument on the same parameter or experiment under the same conditions and in short period of time. Test retest reliability is most commonly used to assess the consistency of a measure from one time to another and also to determine if the score generalizes across time. The same test is conducted twice and are correlated to test the reliability. It is conceptually and intuitively the simplest approach and one that most closely corresponds to the view of reliability as consistency or repeatability of a measure. That is, if a researcher has same people and takes the same measurement or experiment on more than one occasion, that is, a first test occasion and retest occasion, the correlation between each test measurement will be the test retest reliability. The measurement is conducted by single researcher, same parameters or experiment under same conditions, short period of time. It assumes that there is no change in the underlying trait between time 1 and time 2. Test retest reliability is directly investigated from the test data. No data external is required, unlike other types of reliability. Test retest coefficient correlation. The test retest of a measure is estimated through reliability coefficient. Reliability coefficient is often considered as a measure of the accuracy of a test or a measuring instrument obtained by measuring the same individual twice and computing the correlation of the two sets of measures. A test retest coefficient assumes that the characteristics being measured by the experiment is stable over time, so any change in scores from one time to another is caused by random error. The correlation coefficient obtained by this procedure is called test retest reliability coefficient correlation. The test retest reliability coefficient correlation is usually calculated by Pearson coefficient correlation when the measurement or the experiment is taken at two time interval when the two measurements of experiment which is performed more than two occasions are usually calculated by intra-class correlation. Test retest is mostly conducted in two time interval. Then comes Pearson coefficient correlation, which is represented by small r, is calculated by the formula where n is equal to total numbers of pairs of test and retest scores, and small x is test scores, y is retest scores. Test retest reliability coefficient correlation can be classified into various levels of reliability based on the value of r. Calculated Some of the important levels of reliability are given below. Excellent reliability, that is test retest reliability, is said to be excellent reliability when the correlation value is greater than equal to 0.9. Good reliability is test retest reliability is said to be good reliability when the correlation value is between 0.9 and 0.8. Acceptable reliability, test retest reliability is said to be acceptable reliability when the correlation value is between 0.8 and 0.7. Questionable reliability, test retest reliability is said to be questionable reliability when the correlation value is between 0.7 and 0.6. Unacceptable reliability, that is the test retest reliability, is said to be unacceptable reliability when the correlation value is less than or equal to 0.5. Now, let us understand the assumptions and consideration for test retest method. The applicability of test retest reliability depends on two primary assumptions. The first assumption is that the participant's true score is stable across the two testing occasions. That is, the researcher must be confident that respondents' true scores do not change from time first measurement to the second measurement. The second assumption is that the error variance of the first test is equal to the error variance of the second test. Condition for test retest method according to guidelines for evaluating and expressing the uncertainty of NIST measurement results as given in 1994. The following conditions need to be fulfilled in the establishment of test retest method. The same experiment tools, the same observer, the same measuring instrument used under the same condition, the same location, repetition over a short period of time, same objectives. Advantage of test reset method. Test reset method is appropriate for determining the reliability of tests designed to measure attributes that are relatively stable over time and that are not affected by repeated measurements. Test-related method is appropriate for the test of aptitude, which is stable characteristics but not for a test of method. Good test retest method signifies the internal validity of a test and ensure that the measurements obtained in one setting are both representative and stable over time. Test retest reliability ensures consistency of results, as studies with high test retest reliability will produce similar results every time it is administered. Test retest reliability is important because if a study is low in this, it shows that results may be due to factors other than the manipulation of the independent variable. The test retest itself is required, unlike the other method of estimating reliability that requires more than one form. The sample of the items or stimulus situations is held constant, which would seem to minimize the possibility of measuring trace rather than what is designated or designed by the instrument. Disadvantages of test retest method. First is memory. When the interval between the first and second test is too short, respondents might remember what was on the first test and their answers on the second test could be affected by the memory. As an example, subjects may learn something just from taking a test and thus will react differently on the second taking of the test. Then maturation. When the interval between the first and the second test is too long, maturation happens. Maturation refers to change in the subject factors or respondents that occur over time and cause a change from the initial measurement to the later measurements. Let us assume that the researcher is assessing participants' second language pronunciation abilities. Administering the instrument 2 weeks later should produce similar results if it is reliable. However, if there is a 2 month between testing sessions, any training on pronunciation may create differences between the two sets of scores that will depress the reliability coefficient. Now comes the reactivity. Reactivity can affect retest method. Reactivity refers to the fact that sometimes the very process of measuring a phenomena can introduce change in the phenomena itself. Thus, in measuring a person's attitude at a time, the one person can be sensitized to the subject under investigation and demonstrate a change at time 2, which is due solely to the earlier measurement. As an example, if a person is interviewed about the likelihood of voting in an approaching election at time 1, the person might decide to vote at time 2 and cast a ballot at time 3 merely because he or she has been sensitized to the election. In this case, the test-retest correlation will be lower than it would be otherwise because of reactivity. Now let's discuss the concept of test-retest in anthropological research. The test-retest method of assessment reliability can be applied successfully in various anthropological researches, that is, both in qualitative and quantitative research. But there is some limitation when applying it to qualitative research, which is completely descriptive in nature, because it is difficult and challenging to quantify a descriptive or qualitative research. Only those qualitative researches which can be quantified are eligible for test-retest reliability. Now let us try to understand the test-retest reliability in quantitative research. Let us take the height for 10 students using standard instrument, that is anthropometer. After taking the first test, a retest was conducted after 5 days to check the reliability of the measurement and instrument by using test-retest reliability coefficient correlates. Here, x represents the height of the student taken on the first interval of time, test score, and y represents the height of the student taken on the second interval of time, that is retest score. Now comes here the x represents the sum of all the test scores and y represents the sum of all the retest scores. So means here x into y represents sum of all the product of test and retest scores, whereas x2 represents the product of each test scores and y2 represents the product of each retest scores. Means here x2 represents the sum of all the product of each test scores and y2 represents the sum of the product of each retest scores. In order to calculate test-retest reliability, Pearson correlation is best suitable. Therefore, by putting the value of x2, y2, xy and xy in the below Pearson correlation formula, where it is mentioned where n is total number of pairs of test and retest scores, x test scores, y retest scores, the resultant value of correlation coefficient, that is r, comes to 0.98, which is close to plus is equal to 1, suggesting that there exists an excellent positive correlation between test and retest scores. Test-retest method in qualitative research. Now let us take a questionnaire from test and retest method. The response of the questionnaire is assigned different rating scores for each response, which is necessary for calculating the test-retest reliability coefficient correlation. Let us assume that information for perceived stress scale is collected from a respondent in 2 different occasions within a gap of 10 to 15 days using Cohen's questionnaire, which is given in the box. You can see it. Now, table 2 represents the test and retest scores of the questionnaire, which is calculated by using different rating scale for each response. Here, capital X represents the test scores of each questionnaire taken on first interval of time, and Y, that is capital Y, represent the retest score of the questionnaire taken on second interval of the time. Now here the X represent the sum of all the test scores and Y represent the sum of all the retest scores. Means here X into Y represent the sum of the product of test and retest scores, and X2 represent the product of each test scores and Y2 represent the product of each retest scores. The question comes here, X2 represent the sum of all the product of each test scores twice, and Y2 represent the sum of product of each retest scores. Therefore, by using the value of X2, Y2, X and Y and XY in the Pearson coefficient correlation, where n is equal to 10, small x test scores, y retest score, the resultant value of the coefficient correlation, that is R, comes to 0.76, which is close to 1, suggesting that there exists an acceptable positive correlation between test and the retest scores. From the above examples, it was very clear that the test research method for assessment of reliability can be applied in various anthropological works, whether it may in physical anthropology or social anthropology or prehistoric archaeology. The researchers or students should keep in mind the limitation of test or retest method while analyzing the reliability of the measurements or a test, especially of descriptive nature. Here, students, I would like to say few points. Now, in the e-Pathshala, I have given you a different concept, test and retest. I will suggest when you go any statistical books, go through it, the things will be very clear to you. When it is not possible to have in this class to explain, because when you carry out yourself the data collection for 2 days on 2 individuals, whatever the case may be, and you analyze, go through the books, statistical books, where you will find they will understand to test and retest. Or when you go to the field, or before going to the field, take some measurements, human body measurements, anthropometric measurements on this subject, and repeat the measurements. You will find the instrumental error, your personal error, and because of many factors, you will realize on the same date or on the same time, after food, many things are very common to understand. But nowadays, what I will suggest another dimension, that is, nowadays computer has come up. People are not bothered about, just we have the SPSS program, we collect the data, feed in the computer, and we get the result. The basic concept is not clear. So what I suggest, once you go through, collect the data, analyze yourself. The basic concept should be very clear. How to analyze it? That is an art. Just I have seen many students, they are putting the data, SPSS data, and getting the, but at the time of interpretation, in anthropological, in social science, interpretation is very important point to be considered, to be seen, and to, because that interpretation gives you the result, how you will proceed further for research work. So finally, I will say the summary, the reliability is an index that estimates dependability, consistency of scores. Test-related method is the variation in measurements taken up by a single person or instrument on the same item under the same conditions and in a short period of time. Good test research method signifies the internal validity of a test and ensure that the measurement obtained in one sitting are both representative and stable over time. There are various advantages and some disadvantages of test retest method for assessment of reliability. Disadvantage includes memory capacity, maturation, and reactivity of the participants. These 3 points should be kept in mind while doing test retest reliability. Test retest reliability is estimated by using reliability coefficient. The most commonly used reliability formula for assessment of test retest reliability in Pearson's coefficient correlation formula. The test retest method for assessment of reliability can be applied in various anthropological investigations. Test retest reliability estimated the consistency of a measure from one time to another. Assumption in test retests are stable scores and same error variances in different times. Consideration are same experiment, same researcher, same instrument, same location, and same objectives. I would like to say here that whenever you go for a higher study, go for research, whether you are a physical anthropologist or you're a social anthropologist, you have to have test and research method. I have seen over the years that students, they are not interested in carrying out test and retest. They get the instrument, go to the field. I think, in my opinion, they should verify, have the standardized technique for measuring the measurement, and when they do their producibility test research, they will go a long way in future. Thank you.